Welcome to another episode of a podcast that's fine with me. Today we're going to talk about dementia, and I'm not an expert. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to give you a lecture on a specific Alzheimer or vascular type of dementia. I will be sharing an experience from a perspective of my family and my personal perspective of what is going on in my family's life. I'm not going to give you like real thing that is happening right now at the moment, but I know, as a matter of fact, that my grandma, she has dementia. My grandpa, he had dementia. And though both of them acted absolutely differently, what I know for sure is that my grandma, she is not sleeping through the night. She has a lot of prescription, but it doesn't help us to rest properly, at least for this moment of time. And we are looking for a nursing home. And I'm going to talk about some raw emotions, raw feelings. And I just want to give a quick context on why I'm filming today's podcast in particular. I have a permission from my mom to film this podcast, and I felt emotionally exhausted the past week or so. And I realized that there's so many people around my family and as neighbors and friends and family members that actually faced dementia for the older generation. And this podcast is not to ask for pitiness, like, oh, poor me, poor my family. No, I just want to appreciate every single person that is facing the reality of dementia, who is facing the problem of dementia, and just give us support, because I truly understand what you're going through. My mom in particular, she is facing this stage of life related to my grandma. My grandpa died in 2016, and my grandma is alive and she's staying with us right now. So real quick information, I know that over 55 million of people all over the world, they face this problem. It's either Alzheimer or it's either vascular dementia. Unfortunately, by 2050, they're probably going to triple the amount of people having this issue and problem. And I will try to give my 2 cents on what is going on. Is it preventable? Because in 45% of cases, it is preventable. And yes, unfortunately, there's minimum chances you can treat dementia or, treat it properly so it's going to be gone, but at least try to help a person in need. I will be sharing certain emotions that I was afraid to acknowledge, and I think that probably I might be judged for my emotions, but at the same time, I know that you can't tell a person that you should feel a certain way. My grandpa, he was an addict. He was an alcoholic addict. He was drinking his whole life. And when he was around 65 years old or something like this, he had a condition where he got into a hospital. And my mom and my grandma, as well as my aunt, they were going to visit him. And when he came back, he just stopped overall going out. He was staying in his bedroom and he was constantly sleeping. Yeah, of course, we were taking care of him. Going back to this period of time, he was talking to himself. He kept forgetting about his relatives. He did not remember his granddaughters and some grandsons. That is the main reason why the only 2 granddaughters he remembered was me and my cousin. He did not remember what he was doing, that he ate, that he couldn't process some information. That was tough, but majority of us took care of my grandma and my mom. I was helping out when they were going to a countryside, and I was, let's say, babysitting my grandpa, providing some food, taking care of his eyes, some eye drops, and giving him some medicine. That was basically it. And in 2016, he died. I'm gonna be honest. That felt like a relief. And it might sound cruel, but at the same time, this is true. When you can't leave the house without making sure that he's going to stay at home alone or with someone else, and when you know that you shouldn't clean after your relative, that is the main reason why you kind of get an idea that that is a relief. Though it sounds cruel, I am going to be honest, moving further to this topic, that my grandma, while she was taking care of my grandpa, she had a little bit different story. She has no addiction as an alcohol addiction, but my great grandma died at the age of 86, and turned out that she didn't have enough money, and she didn't say this to any of her relatives. It was 90s and from Russia, and people, they were living in very harsh conditions, and they didn't have money at all. So my great-grandma, she didn't say that she had a problem with certain medicine, and people, they're suggesting that she might have died because of that, or because she was 86, and that was like the age where a lot of the times old people, they actually die. So my grandma, I believe she got herself into a position that she got scared that she's going to die if she's not going to take enough pills. And I even remember once she had a fear that she's going to die when she's going to fall asleep. And she went to a psychiatrist and asked for hospitalization where they would help her with this fear and anxiety. She got out like in a month or so and everything was fine, but in early 2000s she started going to see like different type of doctors, and I think that she was seeking certain attention because my grandma, she loves attention. She loves when people, they're going around and celebrating and just talking about my grandma, and this was one of the ways to get this attention for people when she was hospitalized, or when she had to go to some different type of hospitals to see a doctor. My mom, she would go with her, she would drive her around, she would take care of doctors, she would take care of this situations. And my grandma, she got addicted to pills and to doctors. I mean, I feel like this is a situation where everything was connected, more or less. The death of her own mother, and she was lacking some pills, then her own anxiety and fears, the attention seeking part as well, and then her constant feeling that she has something, she has some sort of disease, she has some sort of problem in her health. Because my grandma, she's the type of person that can have a certain problem, and then in a year or so she forgets that she had this issue. Like, for example, she was always telling me that she had a paint allergy. So every single time someone is painting, she has to go because she has allergy and she can't breathe. So, in a couple of years, we were painting, and she was more than fine with this because she had another kind of problem that she made up. Some problems were made up, some problems were real problems. I'm not saying that she was faking everything, but she was doing some sort of kind of like, she was playing games with herself. And during this period of time, she was consuming a lot of pills and a lot of medicine that was prescribed, and sometimes it wasn't prescribed. For example, once I had gastritis, and my grandma, she had some issue like diarrhea or whatever, so she went into my bag, she grabbed some pills from gastritis, and she took them. The next morning I was like, why did you do this? Gastritis has nothing to do with diarrhea. And she's like, is it a problem? Like, why don't you want to give me these pills? So she was always into medicine up until 2020. In 2020, she got in a hospital where my aunt was working, and she's still working there. And in this hospital, some nurses, they took her pills, and she started screaming, and it was like her toys, like a small kid with toys. And turned out that during this, let's say, observation, she had a liver problem. If I'm not mistaken, it's called cirrhosis, where either you consume too much alcohol, or you have too much pills or anything with toxins, and your liver sooner or later just stops, and that's pretty much it. Stop working. Of course, it works somehow, but all these toxins, they're going through her blood, and this blood is poisonous in a way that is going to brain and some other part of her body. And then we realized in 2023 that my grandma, she had a vascular dementia. Vascular dementia is a way, if I'm mistaken, I'm not going to pretend that I'm a doctor, I'm just going to give you a brief understanding of what it is. The Alzheimer is abnormal proteins build up, and they form plaques and tangles that choke the neurons or brain cells. And Alzheimer is a kind of like different story, as well as the vascular dementia is the toxins or damage from liver issues. Something like this. Again, I'm not a doctor. You might, of course, correct me in the comments if you want to, but I don't really need a lot of information to know that it's kind of shitty. When she got out of the hospital, for a long period of time, my mom and I, we were like, feels like she's normal. She doesn't have any deep dementia. She doesn't have anything severe for now, but she does have brain damage, and we do have some proofs. And she can't remember every single relative. She does remember neighbors. She does remember things that she is like doing on a normal basis, or she used to do, or certain things. But during the night, there is a real issue that she doesn't sleep. And she has a lot of prescriptions. Of course, she has some medicine, some pills from dementia, and some other kind of like problems. You can definitely see this as a kind of like a cycle. You can break out of the cycle to keep her dementia in a more or less proper way, and she wouldn't go in a deep dementia. She has to take pills. But these pills, they have toxins and they're going through liver. That is the main reason why it's always a kind of like a battle between what is more important. And of course, brain is more important. She stopped sleeping during the night. She is constantly wandering. She is eating during the night. She is throwing her stuff around. And I was more or less lucky to move out from my parents' apartment. And then my husband and I, we were living this entire time in, let's say, my parents' country house. So my grandma, she was staying in the apartment with my mom, my dad, my sister, and a brother. And my mom, she was struggling this whole time because she said she is screaming during the night. She is moaning during the night and she doesn't really care. And every single time they try to correct her behavior, said like, everyone is sleeping, stop moaning. It's just, it's gonna come back in 5 minutes. And at first my mom thought that, it's really weird. The dementia is the way that you don't remember certain things or you keep forgetting things. But she was perfectly fine during the day. She was sleeping during the day, but during the night, that was a problem. And then we talked to doctors, and doctors said that, yeah, dementia primarily is a night disease where it's worsening. And of course, later stages of dementia, they can cause more problems. They forget about their relatives, they forget their own names. This is not the type of dementia of my grandma. That is the main reason why it's okay. But at the same time, my mom and my relatives, like brother, sister, they are struggling. They were struggling the entire season. And especially my dad, who had to wake up early in the morning along with my brother and to go to school. But she was functioning during the day. She was taking pills during the day and she was perfectly fine. Then during May, my mom started noticing certain weird like behavior, and she was like, what is going on? I feel like something is weird, something is off. But she still was, she's going to the toilet, she is cooking some food, though she has become a little bit more lazy. She stopped cooking, and she, my mom, when she cooks, of course my grandma eats this, but when my mom goes out, she buys a yogurt or some cookies. My grandma is a huge fan of cookies, and she would eat like, I don't know, 10 cookies and she would be perfectly fine. Up until my mom comes back from a country house and feed my grandma with other products. Though my mom was leaving some soup or any other products. At first she was eating and then she skipped it and was eating some cookies. And just sometimes my dad said she was eating, sometimes she wasn't. And of course my mom, she left for summer to a country house with like two of my brother and sister, two of my relatives. And we got a call a week ago that my grandma, she was found in the street naked. She was almost naked, wearing a coat and in some slippers. They called the ambulance. They took her. She was very aggressive. She was scratching, biting, kicking people. That is the main reason why they had to stabilize her with medicine. And it turned out that her lungs, they stopped breathing, and she had to go through rehabilitation, go through a hospital. And we told in this hospital that she has like dementia, but it wasn't that severe. And they said like, no, she's totally fine. She is answering questions. She knows who she is, when she was born. She's totally fine. But in 2 days, they told us that they had to give her very strong medicine so she would sleep, because she was not even aggressive, but she was wandering around and people, they wanted to sleep. She didn't want to go to her bed. She didn't want to go to sleep. That was the main reason why they were giving her really strong sedatives. And of course, my mom and I, we realized that we can't keep her any longer in this apartment, because every single time my mom offered my grandma to go with her, she was like, I have nothing to do there. I have a church, I have shops, I have like nearby hospitals. I don't want to go with you. And she was always like, no, I'm not going. And last year we brought her to a country house and she just ran away. And that was it. That was the end of the story. And yeah, this year she is a little bit more fragile. I promise they're going to be the end of the story. I'm just giving you an example that sometimes when you think that doctors are saying dementia and you're reading some descriptions that dementia, they don't remember anything, whatever, it's still pretty exhausting, especially when a person doesn't sleep during the night and constantly moaning, constantly. Every single minute there's a moan. And it's just driving you nuts. It's driving you crazy. That is the main reason why I was like, so what do we do in this situation? I'm gonna be honest. In certain period of times when we were taking my grandma out of the hospital, I look at my grandma, I talk to my grandma, and when she keeps answering some questions and you have a dialogue with her, you're like, yeah, great. And when she's wandering around the house during the night and she opens the fridge and the fridge starts like making a sound, and then she gets naked, she got naked a couple of days ago and standing in the living room, you're like, sometimes I feel that her suffers that happened a couple of weeks ago, like a week ago when she was in the hospital. I mean, like, she survived the medicine. She took too much medicine. And you're like thinking, is it a better version if a person wasn't saved? Or it's good that the person was saved, but then you don't know what to do with this person. You don't want to do anything, but it's just like either your relatives, my mom, she had a nervous breakdown this spring because she was constantly struggling and she wasn't rested, as well as my dad and other, like my brother and sister. And you kind of like see this from a perspective, like either it's my mom and my dad, thank God my brother and my sister, they're not that sensitive to this moans and screams during the night, or it's my grandma who's 80 years old. Sometimes you feel like, when is it going to be over? When the suffers are going to be over? And if you have this type of thoughts, if you have this type of feelings, I'm not saying that you have to act like God, no. But when you have these thoughts, it's like what my life would look like if I didn't have to take care of this person daily and I had my own life. I could live whatever I want and go and not take of any kind of problem. What would it be? And eventually you start thinking that, I mean, like, if the ambulance didn't come the right time, would it be, let's say, like, would it be a relief? Or you would still, I mean, like, when my grandpa died, we were still crying and mourning the person. But at the same time, we had a huge relief that finally we could live a normal life. And we started looking for a nursing home, because in Russia, at least in the 90s, nursing houses, or like this type of boarding houses, they were always associated with the house where you literally send your relatives that are going to kill them. Not even kill, not literally kill them. No, guys, no. But in a month or so, people literally died there because no one took care of them. And that is almost shameful to send your parent or relative to a nursing home, because I know that in the United States, it's more or less popular. And in Russia, not so much. But now it's getting more popular because, unfortunately, when I was telling you about the symptoms, when I was telling you about the problem with my grandma, though she is almost normal, the other time, like especially during night, she is acting out and you know that you're not getting rested. That is the mere reason why today we visited the first nursing house. We didn't do this with the grandpa, but now we realized that my grandpa, he wasn't as my grandma. My grandma, she's constantly like going somewhere. She needs to go somewhere. She needs to look for something. She needs to do something. She's not resting. I'm like, I don't know where she has that much energy. My grandpa, he was staying in bed and constantly sleeping. That is the main reason why we're really taking care of him. But like at least sometimes for a couple of hours, we could leave him. My grandma is a kind of like different story. And right now we know that we can't leave her. And my dad, he works. My mom, she wants to find a job. And my other, brother or sister, they have something to do. And you can't leave her in the state. That is the main reason why the first time we saw the nursing house, we didn't like it. And I think that we're going to keep on looking for something better. At least what we can do is to pay for the nursing house. My aunt and my cousin, they told us that they're going to participate in the payments. So it's not going to be super heavy on me and my mom. And yeah, my aunt and my cousin, two of my cousins, they did not live with my grandpa and they did not live with my grandma. It's just kind of like a fact that for some period of time, and she didn't know what my mom was talking about. Just like, how could you think of a nursing house? But my mom, she was like, you have no idea what it's like to stay with this person. And when someone tries to judge you or judge anyone around you, or maybe you judging someone with like as a relative with dementia, it's really tough. It's really tough. And up until you're getting into the shoes, you don't know what it's like to have a person with dementia in a family. With my grandpa, I know what it's like, but it wasn't that severe. With my grandma, I had time only last summer when she was spending time with us for 2 weeks and she was acting weird. But this summer, she's like super, super weird. She's, again, not a deep dementia, but she's acting super weird, and yeah, that's a problem. Quick updates. My mom and my grandma, they went to a psychiatrist today, and here's a drastic difference between neurologists that were examining my grandma earlier and a psychiatrist, because when they visited a psychiatrist, she conducted some small tests. First and foremost, she asked what year it is. She doesn't remember the year. My mom told her right before they went to this doctor, but then she forgot, and she was like, it's 19 something. Then she asked about date. She asked about the day of the week. She couldn't answer this question. She asked her to repeat after her a couple of sentences. She forgot these sentences. She couldn't repeat after her. Then she asked a couple of basic and small calculations, like 100 minus 7, how much it's going to be. First she answered it's going to be 103. Then she said 93. And then she asked her like to get more minuses, like 93 minus 7, how it's going to be. She couldn't tell. Another test was to grab a piece of paper and fold it in her left hand, then get it through the right hand, fold it again, and put it on her knees. So she folded this paper in her left hand, and then she forgot. And this type of tests, they were specifically and primarily focusing on analysis, and she asked her to write a sentence. She wrote a sentence containing 3 words. She managed to do this. Then she was asked to draw a couple of shapes. She couldn't draw any shape. It's kind of showing that she has cognitive dysfunction, but at the same time, it's not to the deepest stage. She can remember certain things, but her critical thinking is it's just slipping away. The psychiatrist prescribed different type of medicine, and my mom and I, we realized that we wanted to have a pause, like take a pause and stop looking for some nursing houses for now, because we want to see if it's going to be helpful. So she said that we have to give her some drops that are going to help her slip through the night, and then during the day she would function as a normal person. So as soon as she gets to a normal sleep schedule, probably she's not going to have this major issues. And then in the morning, she would get some other pills that are going to help with her, let's say, vessel system, that are going to help her to clear her head a little bit. Now it's foggy because she doesn't sleep and she doesn't rest. And if she gets a good rest, maybe she's going to be more or less, like, okay. Psychiatrist called my mom termed sandwich. It's called sandwich because at least in Russia, I don't know about like United States or any other countries. So it means that my mom, she has a kid. My brother, he is 11 years old, almost 11 years old. He's going to be 11 this August. My sister, she's 18. That's why we're not going to count her as child. And then my grandma, she is in the stage of like a real child. So she can't do some basic analytics, as probably like a 6 or 5-year-old is still not able to do that. And that is the main reason why I would say that my mom, she's in the middle of both, and she's called sandwich. I don't know. But let's carry on with the podcast. Do not let anyone, I guess, to judge you when it comes to taking care of people with this issue and problem. But, ultimately, I was looking for some answers. My grandpa had dementia. My grandma had dementia. Is there a pattern? Is there going to be some kind of like a problem like with me eventually? Of course, I was like digging and looking for some information, because it turned out 45% of people with dementia, they could have avoided dementia because they should have had a healthier lifestyle. That is the main reason I was like, okay, what can I do today so it's going to affect my future? And it's pretty basic. You have to work out, because it really helps to build some healthy protein, if I'm not mistaken, in your brain that's going to protect from damaging cells, brain cells, because while you're working out, there's a lot of oxygen in blood, and when your blood is floating with oxygen, it really helps the brain to get rid of some kind of like toxins or whatever, some kind of thing. Again, I'm not a doctor. Then of course your food preferences, fast food or whatever, yeah, of course you can eat it sometimes, but most likely you have to eat a lot of vegetables, fruits. I know that sometimes it's really expensive, but there are certain vegetables and fruits that are not going to cost you a fortune, like cabbage or apples or carrots, all sorts of those type of vegetables and fruits. And then finally, of course, there are going to be a lot of work, learn languages, or maybe learn some poems, or maybe try to watch a podcast about investments if you have no idea what the investment is. So it's literally, you have to make your brain work for you. Do not drink. We realized that my grandpa, he was drinking. That is the main idea why he had dementia. And do not take too much pills, of course, excessive pills, of course, any toxins, sleep, rest. That is the main reason why, while I was talking about these emotions, like raw emotions, and where I was talking that if I have to choose between my mom, my dad, and of course sister or brother, because my mom, she was more sensitive to all this moans and all this kind of problem with sleep, and she's still really, really emotional about this. And my grandma, who is 80 years old, of course I'm going to choose my mom. And of course I'm worried that my mom doesn't sleep during the night because she has to rest. And that is the main reason why I feel like sleep is kind of like a brainwash, where you it's like cash, when you get rid of some nasty thing, emotionally tired, and then you wake up and you can function. I guess that's pretty much basic. So healthy lifestyle, which is not bad. And the worst part that in this position, people with dementia, they are suffering, but they're not suffering as much as relatives, because this is the way every single person chooses to live. And when you try to live a healthy lifestyle, you try to ensure that your future kids are not going to suffer and they're not going to have a problem. Of course, again, there's so much more to this. And like 45% out of 55 million people, I'd say they could have prevented dementia, but there's still like 55% of people that couldn't prevent dementia. This is just the way it was happening to them. And I know that there's so many other countries all over the world that have no access to medicine, and there are probably no records of these people that have dementia. They just die somewhere in their rooms, and that is it. That is the main reason why this podcast is probably too raw. And this podcast it might sound a little bit controversial for each person, but at the same time, if you feel a certain way, it doesn't mean that you're going to act the certain way. And if you have a feeling that, God, when a relative or someone that you take care of is going to pass away and I'm going to be finally free, just like able to live my life, I feel like every single person that takes care, not only people who have dementia, but people with any other severe conditions, people who are staying in bed and they're not able to move, this is a thought that probably gets into a brain of every single person. But of course, we're shamed for even thinking this way. And again, if we're thinking this way, it's normal because you're tired. It's not normal because you're going to act on what you're saying, or thinking, or emotionally experiencing. It's the way that you are a human being. I was in this position when I was staying with my grandpa. I was in a position when I was relieved when he died. And I was like, we don't have to take care of him, all nonstop. And when we called a therapist and invited her over, she's like, yeah, he has dementia, and because he had too much alcohol during his life. And she said, this is a common problem. And then you're like, so this person, and again, my grandpa or any other person who is drinking heavily, so they're like, this is my life, I don't care what you think while I'm drinking. But at the same time, when they have dementia or they have any other disease, relatives have to take care of their actions and, suffer in certain ways. So, yeah, as well as my grandma, taking all these pills. And I remember when we tried to take these pills and say, like, you don't have to take that much, she was literally screaming, crying, and she was manipulating. She was begging. She was on her knees begging, give her pills. My mom's like, are you crazy? Get up from your knees. And she's like, I'm begging you, please give me my pills. Give me my pills. I need my pills. And she has her pension, and she goes to pharmacy, and she spends almost the entire pension on this medicine. That is the main reason why right now we have to give her this medicine. That is the main reason why we can't leave her. We can go away, and a nursing house is probably only way to fix this issue. That is the main reason why I feel like, yeah, this is kind of tough and scary to see what certain choices in our life, and maybe not even choices, even people with healthy lifestyle, they have dementia. It's scary. I went to this nursing house today and I saw all this women saying together on the third floor, and they were okay. Like, we heard they were like, yeah, we're really like here. And they were kind of like watching TV, but most of them, they were looking in one direction. We're not even communicating because they have dementia. And I was like, I really wanted to cry. I really wanted to cry. And I just saw myself sitting there and not being able to stay at home. And it was like, my grandma, she's not going to be able to stay at home in her apartment if we get her to the nursing home. And it's kind of scary, but at the same time, it's so much more scarier to leave her alone. She would literally commit a suicide by drinking too much pills and getting into the ambulance. I kind of feel you guys. If you're watching this podcast and you needed some reassurance that some of your feelings are justified, your emotions are justified, your thoughts are justified, and you're tired, you don't know, you feel like probably you're betraying your relative, I don't think you're betraying. You have to choose between you as a healthy human being or an older relative who is in this condition. It's really tough. I don't really think there is a right and wrong situation. I don't even know what this podcast is going to be about. It's kind of like all over the place, but I don't really know how to structure this. And I wanted to share this with people just to let them know you're not alone. I love you all so much, and I'm going to see you in my next podcast. It's fine with me. Bye bye.